Using shipping containers to build my house was one of my best decisions. Today, I have an eco-friendly house that was affordable and taught me do-it-yourself skills. But not everyone has the skills or the time to build their own house. Fortunately, many companies today offer container homes built by professionals. That's the case with Green Habitat, a Brive-la-Gaillarde company I visited. Today, why would someone build a house out of shipping containers instead of a traditional house made of concrete or wood, for example?
Great question. Actually, there are several reasons for that. I think we can divide them into three categories. There's the ecological aspect, which is very current, of course, but there's also the speed aspect, where there's really no comparison. We're faster than other construction methods. There's also the economic advantage.
How is it more environmentally friendly to build a house out of shipping containers than a traditional concrete house?
So on one hand, we work in a workshop. We are not going to pollute in the street. With the comings and goings of trucks, semi-trailers making deliveries of concrete materials, cinder blocks, and so on, we arrive during the day, the house is set up, so there is very little pollution. Instead of reprocessing materials, Kaisil, we reuse them, so it's environmentally friendly. Then we use siding, wood or something else, so it's environmentally friendly. Wood wool is environmentally friendly. Concrete is not environmentally friendly, so we use very little of it in our constructions.
The houses from Green Habitat, our construction method, means that our houses consume much less energy. First, they need less cooling in the summer and less heating in the winter, thanks to the quality of the insulation. And since they heat up less and cool down less energy is needed to keep them at a comfortable temperature. Which means that throughout the entire life cycle after construction, the residents of Green Habitat houses will consume less energy. That's the financial side, plus their carbon footprint will be smaller than in a traditional house.
And precisely that connects to the economic point. How much more economical is it to have a house built from a shipping container compared to a concrete or wooden house? Well, a more traditional house.
So the crucial point is that we're talking more about economics as long as we compare it to the equivalent. So yes, with equivalent services, I can say that we're 20 to 30% cheaper than traditional. So equivalent service means an aesthetic result in terms of cladding, and it also means the design of the flat roof. And then there's the thermal insulation aspect, where we have houses that, in terms of energy performance, are practically passive houses. My claim of being 20 to 25% cheaper. It's for this house behind us, which is a 4-container house, so it's a model home, that's what it is. French homebuyers typically seek about 108 square meters of living space in this type of house. Yes, I can confirm we're 20 to 30% cheaper than traditional houses for the same features.
And how much is the house if I want to buy it?
So this reflects what I said earlier. So there are about 110 square meters of living space then. We'll be at about 240,000 euros. Knowing that in our services, we start with clearing the land. The foundations, everything that's weatherproof and airtight, and all the interior finishing work inside the house. Knowing that we'll stop at the painting and we won't be doing the kitchen.
Green Habitat also offers to deliver the house weatherproof and airtight, leaving the finishing work to the clients. This lets you have a cheaper house and partially self-build it. And the last big advantage is that it's more eco-friendly, it's more economical, and on top of that, it's very quick to build. If I get my building permit tomorrow and call Green Habitat, how long until my house is ready to move in?
Well, to put it simply, since we can't influence or manage the administrative and regulatory part, etc., we support our clients with that, so we have a dedicated team that helps prepare the building permits that our clients will submit. There are appeal periods afterwards. So if I put myself at the point where we can start taking action a house like this, Definitely less than 6 months, okay? Which means less than 6 months compared to traditional methods. We're going to be at 12 or 18 months, and that's when things go well. So for us, we're hardly bothered by bad weather. We have a pretty precise workload plan with our team based on experience for how much time we'll spend on each house.
There are no more weather delays. We build in a workshop so our people, both our roofers and our masons too. From the moment they finished their concrete slab, everything else was done in the workshop, including the roofing. So time saved, the time was cut by a third. We respect the difficulty of the work, meaning that we have people who are sheltered, who work under cover while still being in construction. So there are still advantages, both for the clients and for the workers' health.
And above all, we have the ability, and that's something specific to off-site and 3D construction. It's that in the workshop, while we do the watertight and airtight part of the house structure in 6 to 8 weeks, at the same time, our teams will be working on site with earthworks and foundations. Drying time can't be shortened. So all of this will happen in parallel, which means the structure will be what we call weatherproof and airtight in 2 months. From the moment we start to the moment the clients have it on their land, it's 2 months. And then we'll add the finishing work, which also has unavoidable delays. And let's say that with 4 months for the finishing work, we're relatively comfortable. For a house, that's what we call ready to decorate. There were less than 6 months between the moment we took the first action, the moment we ordered the first supplies. The container is what we order first. Between that moment and the moment we hand over the keys to the client. 6 months, yes, that's realistic.
So it's very fast. People don't want to wait anymore. They don't want to wait 2 years for delivery and to get the keys. Because they'll be paying rent, they'll start paying back the loan. So that all adds up to the benefit.
Building a container house is a fast, cost-effective, and most importantly, eco-friendly solution. Not only because the containers are recycled, but also because the insulation is so good that energy consumption will be very low. This makes it possible, for example, to put a few solar panels on the roof and connect all of that to a battery. We're in your warehouse. What's your main advantage? Building a container house here, protected from weather, is much easier than doing it on site. As you mentioned earlier, what is your work capacity here?
Before discussing work capacity, I want to add something. What we have in the workshop are our own workers, so we don't have any subcontractors in the workshop, which also means we have a direct eye on what they are doing. So it's not to monitor them, but the design office is above. Discussions about production plans occur whenever communication is needed, with or without interpretations. The production planner can also visit the workshop to check on things. So that's another important advantage. Then, in terms of production capacity, there's a hangar here that's 4 square meters. We had up to 20 containers. Then, to answer how many houses in at the same time, that's going to depend. Here, there are modules made of 2 containers, but we've already built a house with up to 10 containers. So far, all by itself, it took up a large part of the workshop. So there are multiple advantages. These are the advantages of off-site construction. So we're not the only ones doing it, as I mentioned. But for example, we'll have a stock of wood that we'll use for several projects at the same time, for everything related to secondary framing. We'll be able to have a team that at some point, if we're behind on a house, we'll be able to move from one house to another. So there are a lot of advantages.
Doing multiple projects at once offers economies of scale and savings.
Of scale, logistics savings, without even mentioning the back and forth on the construction sites, etc. Production in the workshop really makes sense, right? It's really an important part of our uniqueness, our business model, and our construction method.
Can you briefly describe the main stages of building a container house, from laying the foundation to getting the keys? And when we can actually live in it?
Okay, well, so the steps are always the same for us and they always follow the same order. The first step is our team will work on the outside. So there will be the earthwork, excavation, and then the foundations. The foundations, which generally speaking for us are made of reinforced concrete. But depending on the land, we have already called on companies like Technopure with great satisfaction. As soon as we start outside, everything in the workshop will begin simultaneously. So the workshop, the first step is receiving the shipping containers. We mainly work with used 40-foot high cube containers, the ones we call last trip containers. They arrive at the workshop and that's where the adaptation begins. There will be cutouts and reinforcements according to the client's project requirements. Then the containers will be brought back to the transformation platform that's behind us. Where? So right there. We're going to level them. We're going to assemble them just like the house will be on the land. And then we'll start our different operations. So always the same ones. We're going to start by putting a series of plates on the long beams.
On which one?
We're going to put a wooden structure that will be placed on the plates, fixed to the containers and adjusted with brackets. To get the right alignment, in this wooden structure we're going to put our exterior insulation. We usually work on 12 centimeters of wood fiber. Wood fiber has a big advantage in terms of phase shift and is also easier for us to install. This wood fiber will be inserted into the timber frame walls on the outside. Once we've completed all the external thermal insulation or external thermal insulation, we install our windows and then move on to the framework. On this framework, there is usually insulation as well, 240 millimeters of wood fiber. On this framework, we will install a marine-oriented strand board decking. The only co-contractor we have with us, because we do everything else ourselves, is the waterproofing specialist chosen by the clients. The waterproofing specialist will come to install his polyvinyl chloride membrane, prepare everything related to roof outlets, the rainwater drains and so on. And this waterproofing specialist will do roughly 80% of his work in the workshop. The only thing he won't do is cover the seams at the junctions of the containers, since each container will be shipped separately, just as it arrived, except that they're 30 to 40 centimeters longer then. So they're shipped separately and they'll be placed on the site exactly the same way they were here, as they are here in the workshop.
And before the containers are delivered, you insulate the underside of the containers.
So this platform on our foundation, whether it's on a concrete slab or on screw piles, this insulation will be put in place before the containers are delivered. What kind of insulation is it? We usually use sandwich panels with polyurethane foam. Once the containers are placed on this platform, because of the specific features of the containers, the International Organization for Standardization Corners, there will be a small air gap between the sandwich panel and the bottom floor of the container. So we create another layer of thermal and air insulation around the container. Fill the holes with polyurethane foam, then add wood fiber and the small pieces. Joints with polyurethane foam.
That way, you have all the insulation done on the outside of the house and you really don't have any thermal bridges.
There are no thermal bridges, not even between the container floor and our sandwich panels. There's even a small air gap that's part of the best insulators regarding anything thermal.
Can we use shipping containers for anything? Can a house be any shape? Or are there still constraints that need to be respected?
For single-story houses, yes, we can do anything, since they rest directly on piers and we can move the piers depending on the final shape of the house. But for a two-story house, no, it only applies to the upper floor. A study needs to be done beforehand to properly position the upper floor in relation to the load paths and also the cost. And do you handle that as a structural engineering firm, let's say, for your clients? Yes. For the standard houses in our catalogs, we already have validated structural studies. And for complicated, really specific houses, we call on a structural engineering firm to do the study and the load calculations.
Yes, really, to guide the clients, advise them, and give them a project that's really solid. Exactly. What are the rules to follow if you want to build a house out of containers? Shipping?
So the rules are pretty simple. What we're talking about is a 20-footer. It's 15 square meters, no permit needed. It's just declarative, okay? So here we're at 30 square meters gross, so 25 livable, for example, building permit required, okay. Here, 4, maybe 5 containers.
5 containers, we're under 150 square meters.
No architect, but if you add a 6th container, you'll need an architect. Because we go over 150 square meters exactly, because we go over 150 square meters. So you need a permit submitted by an architect.
Okay, so yes, there are 3 types of permits and different prices. Exactly.
Construction has rules.
And you build all types of houses, large or small, like that?
We work with an architect for projects over 150 square meters. Otherwise, the rest is just declarative. We handle it. More and more, there is demand for garden studios, shelters in front of the pool because of the increase.
Okay. Some modules often resemble containers. Using slightly corrugated steel cladding makes it resemble a shipping container, which doesn't really alarm city councils. Getting a permit for unusual houses like that is easy.
Maybe there are a few extra steps compared to a traditional house, let's say. But our acceptance rate is extremely high. In the 4 or 5 departments where we work the most around Brive, the rejection rate is negligible. But we also have the ability to adapt. That is to say, sometimes the urban planning offices are not against metal cladding, but it's about the color.
We can use any color, but the price lookup sets certain guidelines.
And there you go, but so we're going to respect them. Afterwards, the aesthetics in terms of flat roofs actually often, in our experience, often it's a non-issue. That is what sometimes scares the building permit examiner, is the idea of a container house, but the flat roof, when you come, we have sometimes accompanied clients to the town hall to defend their case. When we come with pictures of our completed projects and the client's project placed in its environment, at that point, we almost never get rejected anymore. The permit instructors are impressed. I'm speaking from experience, that's how it happens.
And then on the roof, do you work on sloped roofs too, or just flat roofs?
We did one house that way, but that's usually not the idea. Behind Green Habitat's construction. Green Habitat has a concept, and it has to be. It must be everywhere. It's a signature.
If the city hall refuses flat roofs, it often happens that city halls don't want flat roofs, they want sloped roofs. What do you do?
We ask for the law to be applied. Grinnell 2 of the environment.
The Grinnell 2 law states that the city hall cannot prohibit a flat roof as long as it is green, or if it has sustainable features like rainwater retention or renewable energy production, even if the local price lookup regulations are against it. Today, how many projects have you completed since the company started, and what is your production capacity for the coming years?
So today, very concretely, we have already completed more than 120 projects.
In how many?
Since its creation about 8 years ago. We release between 12 and 18 projects a year, but the projects vary greatly in size. I can't move the cursor. What we've noticed, however, since 2016, 2017 and our first projects, is that the average size of our projects is increasing. That is to say, in the first years, the projects averaged between 2 and 3 containers. Currently, our typical project matches our model home. 4 containers, 110 square meters of living space, similar to the average French house.
My container house that I built.
There you go, it's not by chance.
Thank you for welcoming us and showing us behind the scenes. And now we're going to keep making tutorials on our end to help people with self-building. But we also know that we have this solution, coming over to do the weatherproofing or the whole house. This way, we can get a container house faster and likely better finished than doing it all ourselves. It offers many possibilities. I'm glad I got to meet. It's important.
There's an ecosystem for container houses. We're not the only builders. I think we're a little bit ahead compared to some others. But there are also training companies. There are also people like you who are here to support self-builders or semi-self-builders who might also need builders like us. So in this ecosystem, I believe that the direction things are heading is that the container house has a bright future.
Well, thank you for that conclusion. Subscribe for upcoming videos and ask questions in the comments so we can help with your projects. See you soon on this channel and maybe for more videos together. Thank you.